Lady Frankenstein is a 1971 Italian horror film starring Rosalba Neri, Joseph Cotton, Paul Mueller, Mickey Hargitay, and Riccardo Pizzuti as the monster. Taking its cues from Mary Shelley's classic story, in this, Dr. Frankenstein and his assistant Charles are obtaining bodies from grave robbers to use in their experiments to create life. When Frankenstein's daughter Tanya shows up fresh out of medical school, she desperately wants to help her father with his research. Unfortunately, Dr. Frankenstein doesn't want her involved due to the illegal nature of what he's doing. Eventually, the monster is created with a damaged brain and ends up killing Dr. Frankenstein, causing Tanya to take up the family business. Tanya realizes that the only way to destroy the monster, which is now roaming the countryside and murdering people, is to create a second monster, this one with an intelligent brain and not one of a criminal. Knowing that Charles has always wanted to bang her, she manipulates him into killing Thomas, the mentally handicapped farmhand, and convincing Charles to let her put his brain into Thomas's body. Tanya tells Charles he's too old and crippled for her to be physically attracted to, but if his brain were in the body of the hot farmhand, well then that's a different story. Charles as Boner agrees, and the two enact their plan, all while trying to dodge a suspicious police captain, Thomas's concerned sister, and an angry mob of villagers ready to storm Frankenstein's castle with torches and pitchforks. The film was directed by Mel Wells, who was a jack of all trades when it came to working in the film industry. A prolific minor character actor who starred in everything from 1960's The Little Shop of Horrors.
Bring me whiskey, rum, wine, gin, bourbon.
What?
Scotch, rye, tequila, sake, Manischewitz.
Did you bring the money?
Don't bug me with the money. I got to get drunk now.
To 1986's Chopping Mall.
Sit.
Oh, honey, you're breaking my heart.
Wells first gained real notoriety for writing the famous poem High School Drag, recited by Philippa Fallon from the controversial 1958 teen drug film High School Confidential.
Sleep, man, and you might wake up digging the whole human race, giving itself 3 days to get out. Tomorrow is a drag, Pops. The future is a flake.
Wells eventually made his way overseas to Europe and met a rich dude named Harry Cushing, who was trying his very best to sleep with Italian actress Rosalba Neri. In order to do that, Cushing felt the best way to woo her would be to produce a movie for her to star in. Cushing was able to produce 2 films for Neri, this and 1972's The Devil's Lover. It worked because the two were married in 1973 before marital problems and increasingly poor film offers caused her to end her marriage, raise her daughter Francesca Neri, who would become an accomplished actress in her own right, and then leave the industry for good in 1975. That initial script meant for Neri was Lady Dracula, but due to rights issues, Wells and Cushing could not shoot it at the time. Lady Dracula would eventually be filmed in 1975, but without the participation of anyone involved in Lady Frankenstein. And confusingly, Neri would eventually play a character called Lady Dracula in a separate film, The Devil's Wedding Night, in 1974, which again was not connected to Wells or Cushing. Wells worked with his friends Edward D. Lorenzo and Dick Randall to come up with the story for Lady Frankenstein, which took roughly 3 weeks to write. The Wikipedia page notes that film historian Robert Curdy has indicated that the script may have been inspired by a short story found in issue number 4 of Vampirilla, released in 1969, titled For the Love of Frankenstein. In the short story, Dr. Frankenstein's niece Hedwig is repulsed by her assistant Eric, who she once loved during medical school but now finds disgusting due to his age and appearance. However, Hedwig continually seduces Eric in order to get him to produce her fresh bodies, ultimately shooting him and placing his brain within a fresh young cadaver. Eric is brought to life as the monster, only for him to strangle her to death and then destroy himself in a fiery explosion. At only 7 pages in length, the story shares many similarities to Wells' script, including the main plot points of brain transference, a female Frankenstein attempting to reanimate the dead, her being a medical student who previously had feelings for her assistant, then finding him sexually repulsive, and finally being strangled to death in the final moments. There appear to be way too many similarities to this and the Vampirilla short story to chalk it up to mere coincidence, and I tend to agree with Curti that this was probably a large inspiration for the film Lady Frankenstein. Wells wanted to ensure his script had a very feminist point of view, so he wrote Tanya as someone who would stand up to her male counterparts.
My dear sir, you are an obnoxious man, extremely vulgar, and I'm certain that whatever you are thinking is merely fantasy on your part. I would say that you spend too much time alone in your fantasies. Be careful. It will soften your brain far quicker than whiskey.
How can somebody so lovely be such a bitch?
It depends on the company I'm with.
And that the women in the film were not ashamed or looked down upon for their sexuality.
Drinking alone?
No, he wasn't. Are you in the mood, Captain?
Dick Randall was himself a prolific producer of B-movies, whose credits include the famous Pieces, The Devil's Lover, and The French Sex Murders, the latter two also starring Rosalba Neri, which probably helped get her on board the project. The budget of the film was less than $200,000, with $90,000 of that being contributed by Roger Corman after Italian banks refused to fully finance shortly before filming was to begin. Wills had previously worked with Corman on The Little Shop of Horrors, and that is probably how their relationship was established. Corman secured the U.S. distribution rights because of this and promptly chopped roughly 15 minutes off the runtime, from an hour and 39 minutes to an hour and 23 minutes. Corman's version primarily cuts exposition scenes down, but retains the sex and nudity exploitation elements because, of course, boobs sell. The lack of a budget caused rewrites to the script and shortened Joseph Cotton's shooting schedule to 2 weeks, which is why Dr. Frankenstein dies 40 minutes into the film. Cotton was a very famous actor in the United States and is most remembered today for his various collaborations with Orson Welles, including Citizen Kane and The Third Man. Mickey Hargitay shows up as Captain Harris and arguably steals the show.
Because one day you'll be shaking hands with Morgan in hell.
Oh, I'll save my other hand for you, Captain.
You don't have much time, Lynch. You're sure to make a mistake one day. And that's the day I'll own you.
Hargitay was a famous bodybuilder, winning Mr. Universe in 1955, but who may be most remembered today as the husband of Jane Mansfield. Paul Mueller, who played Charles, had over 200 film credits to his name in Italy alone, and would go on to work with Neri again in Roger Corman's 1974 Roman epic, The Arena, also starring a young Pam Grier. Rosalba Neri's film career lasted from 1958 to 1976. Often using the pseudonym of Sarah Bay, she initially was cast in sword and sandal epics and spaghetti westerns before eventually transitioning to horror, exploitation, and giallo films in the late 60s. Along with her contemporaries such as Edwige Fenech and Barbara Boucher, Neri was one of the top scream queens of her day, certainly in Italy, and began popping up in many horror and exploitation films such as Slaughter Hotel, Amok, and Jus Franco's 99 Women. Notably, Neri did not have great things to say about Welles, noting that he was not a great director and giving the credit to Riccardo Palatini, who was the cinematographer. According to Neri, Palatini set up all the shots himself and essentially acted as the director. Now, I think this is a very underrated horror film from the early 70s. It's unique in that the monster isn't really the focus of it at all. In fact, there's very little violence and gore in the film, certainly comparatively less than the Hammer films of that time, as the monster just sort of hugs people to death, and the makeup looks pretty goofy, to be honest. The main interest here is the relationship between Tanya and Charles. If you can get past the subpar dubbing and iffy pacing issues, there's some fairly creepy overtones in this. For example, there is a scene where Tanya not only seduces the mentally handicapped Thomas, but is only able to orgasm when he's being suffocated to death by Charles with a pillow. And Charles is watching his new wife screw the guy while he himself has to assist her in murdering this person he considers a friend. It's all pretty messed up. The film also adds interesting lore, such as the lightning bolt itself being the cause of the superhuman strength that the Frankenstein monster has.
Our creature will kill my father's murderer.
No, it's impossible. Even if you found the right brain, your creature, despite the superhuman strength induced by the lightning.
The sets, lighting, and atmosphere of the film mimic classic Hammer films, and there are a number of great side characters such as Lynch and his cohort of grave robbers, very obviously inspired by Burke and Hare, who lend an air of sleaze to what is trying to be an upper scale production.
I don't want money from you.
I see.
I knew you would. Just for one night. Then I'll find you your man. It won't cost you a thing.
It will. I feel nothing but repulsion for you.
I don't give a damn how you feel about me. It ain't your feelings I want.
So you have this really great dichotomy of a really nice looking Hammer-esque production, but lots of sleazy characters and undertones and even overtones. Now this film won't be for everyone, and I can sort of see complaints that it's a slow burn, but I like slow burns, so that doesn't bother me. If that is something that may bother you, I'd recommend the Corman cut, which still gets the main beats of the plot, but excises some of the more talky aspects found in the Welles cut. Now, both versions of Lady Frankenstein are available on YouTube and archive.org, links in the description below. There have also been a couple of Region 2 Blu-rays that contain like a plethora of extras, including audio commentaries from film historians, a featured documentary on the making of the film, etc. So if you like the film, I'd recommend picking up one of those if you have a region-free Blu-ray player, because you can get a lot more information on the film than what's in this video. So thanks for listening to another installment of Forgotten Horrors. For the next episode, I'm going to switch it up a bit and let you decide which film I'm going to cover. You got two options. You have Freddie Francis's 1963 film Paranoiac starring Oliver Reed, and then you have Terence Fisher's 1964 film The Earth Dies Screaming, which for my money is one of the coolest titles in cinematic history. Leave a comment on which you'd prefer below, and whichever one gets the most selections is what I will cover on the next Forgotten Horrors.